Greetings, Diocese of Olympia, and all who may be watching. I come to you today on the day we commemorate the life, ministry, and witness of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I've done this every year I've been here, which included last year, and though we can say this just about at any anniversary on any year, it might be truer today than any other such commemoration in my lifetime, at least, and in my experience, and that is this. My, how the world has changed since last year on this day. Since this day last year, the world has been plunged into the COVID-19 pandemic, and then our eyes and our hearts were opened in ways they had never been before with the brutal murder of Mr. George Floyd. It was then that many of us recognized the second pandemic that has been part of this country since its founding. The pandemic that Dr. King tried to fight and lost his life for. The pandemic that is still with us, racism and racial injustice. We have a vaccine for COVID now, the first pandemic, and I pray it is what will end it. Unfortunately, there is no vaccine for racism, at least not one that can be put in vials and then into your arm. I would say there is a vaccine, not anything like the elixir we all hope to receive soon, but this vaccine's development and production can only and will only occur if all of us put in our work. That vaccine comes from our hearts and then actions that match. For many of us who look like me, and in our church, sadly, that's most of us, that starts with a heavy dose of listening and learning about this truth, a truth that with privilege is so easy to ignore, cover up, deny, to even jump to the false belief that we have this solved. For others, it involves bravely telling their story and challenging the rest of us to learn more, to do more, and finally to be more. It will only happen if we all work on it. Dr. King knew this, talked about it more than just about anything, and tried to live it too. Like every January, I knew this day was coming. As I prepared my thoughts in my heart and mind, I came face to face with Dr. King. On the Feast of the Epiphany, the day of the insurrection at our U.S. Capitol, as I watched, like many of you, in horror at what was occurring there as marchers with Confederate flags and anti-Semitic t-shirts and other messages of hate and division walked right through the rotunda of that building, there was Dr. King witnessing it all. Well, okay, the bust of Dr. King was witnessing it all. That bust was unveiled in the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol in January of 1986, which would have been Dr. King's 57th birthday, my age now. It's been there watching ever since. In the days immediately following that day, there it was again, this time a picture of Dr. King's bust, and just below it, strewn out all over the floor and all around it, sleeping National Guard soldiers, sent there now to protect our Capitol and to protect our democracy. I had to think if a bust could cry, that one would. For whatever good distance we have traveled these past years and even more these past days, they have also revealed how much farther we still have to go. Over the years, on this day, I usually quote Dr. King. I often try to stay away from really one of my favorite things he ever wrote, the letter from the Birmingham jail, because it's so often cited, but that's exactly where I'm going to focus this year. In fact, on every Martin Luther King Day, this is what I read in its entirety for myself. And I always think every year how true, sadly, the words, the needs, the quest still is even today. That has never been more true than this year. I urge you all to read it. And when you do, you might do something some people do not always do with this. Read the letter sent to him by the 8 white pastors, which prompted his writing back. And go beyond that and read the first letter they wrote to him months before. The same men, and they were all men. Prominent among those white men on that list was the Episcopal Bishop of Alabama at the time. The church, all of us, you and me, have much to atone for and much to do. Every time I read the letter from the Birmingham jail, I think of Dr. King as a modern-day Paul, imprisoned for a righteousness that was not ready to be accepted. It is in this letter that one of his most famous quotes is found: "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." More and more in this last year and these last days, we have come to realize miles away from such things does not insulate us from the effects, neither does it relieve us of our responsibility. In this letter is wisdom far beyond racism, but also so vital in our fight of it. This is the Fuller quote. Moreover, I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its bounds, unquote. This, as we have seen in these last days, is still a point of contention. This simple reality is still being debated, protested, and even assaulted. But I believe his words are as important and just as true as the day he wrote them. He did a lot in that letter about the label given to him as an extremist. Read carefully his whole section on that. This is a word and a reality we are certainly going through today. The middle seems missing. He says so clearly what I hope we hear today. And I quote him again. So the question is not whether we will be extremists, but what kind of extremists we will be. Will we be extremists for hate or for love? Will we be extremists for the preservation of injustice or for the extension of justice? In that dramatic scene on Calvary's Hill, 3 men were crucified. We must never forget that all 3 were crucified for the same crime, the crime of extremism. 2 were extremists for immorality and thus fell below their environment. The other, Jesus Christ, was an extremist for love, truth, and goodness, and thereby rose above his environment. Perhaps the South, the nation, and the world are in dire need of creative extremists, unquote. And while we as faithful Christians should work for justice for all while following the gospel imperative, we should not in that pursuit live under the false illusion that the church, that we have it all figured out. We haven't. Dr. King's words to the church in that letter from the Birmingham jail are also just as true today. Dr. King wrote, "But despite these notable exceptions, I must honestly reiterate that I've been disappointed with the church. I do not say this as one of those negative critics who can always find something wrong with the church. I say this as a minister of the gospel who loves the church, who is nurtured in its bosom, who has been sustained by its spiritual blessings, and who will remain true to it as long as the cord of life shall lengthen. A year ago, and all the years before, we dutifully celebrated this day and all that Dr. King stood for, believed in, died for. But it's always been a rather passive and fleeting celebration. We acknowledge it, and then we go back to our lives. This year has to be different, and I hope all the years to come as well. We have been changed by this last year, whether we wanted it or not, whether we know it or not, whether we believe it or not. And we, the church, still have much work to do ourselves. That work, being done daily, would be the greatest honor we could pay to the prophet we commemorate today, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Blessings to all of you.